Hi, this is May Sayed Ali, and I will be the host of the brand new G42 on-air podcast series. Today, and from the wonderful city of Abu Dhabi, I am thrilled to be recording the first ever podcast episode for G42 on-air here in the Mubadala studio. G42 is a technology company, a global leader in AI and cloud computing, with the purpose of inventing a better every day. Each episode in this series will transport you into insightful market-leading conversations about transformative technology to drive positive progress across industries and societies, all in less than 30 minutes. And here with me in Mubadala studio, we have Faheem Ahamed, Group Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at G42, an effects-based strategic communications practitioner with over 25 years of experience in influencing hearts and minds. Faheem has effectively worked across brands, nations, and for social impact causes across Australasia, Middle East, US, UK, and Europe. As a Group Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at G42, Faheem has been supporting several strategic initiatives, including spearheading G42 Healthcare's For Humanity vaccine trials, as well as G42's Brand Evolution program. In our first episode, we will spend some time talking about finding humanity in technology, why companies like G42 has dedicated their businesses as well as their aspiration to developing artificial intelligence technologies, and who are those benefiting from such technologies at the end of the day. We'll also talk more about the heart and soul of G42 and how their teams are contributing to that work, and speak to the role AI will have in transforming industry and society to drive positive progress that benefits humanity. Faheem, good morning. How are you today?
Morning. Thank you very much. I think I got a very generous introduction thanks to being the producer of the show. So that's kind of quite cool. But yeah, thank you. We're very excited about this podcast, and the floor is yours. And
I'm really excited to be with you, Faheem. And to be honest with you, with your bio, it's much more than that. I mean, you still look really young. So I'd like to know more about why did you join G42? If you can tell me more about you.
Sure. I would say perhaps three things. So as a child, my parents would hate me for this, but I was the kid that would pretty much break every toy to see what's inside and then try and fix it back. So I've always been the curious one, right? So that's been the driver. The second one is I've always been an early adopter of things, especially when it comes to technology. Mm-hmm. So back in the 80s, did Pascal programming and C++, all of that, which was of interest, but I never took it as a career. So that itch is always there. And then as a professional communicator, I didn't want to be in communicating or marketing. I was actually interested in people and how they behave and what they do. And that's how I got into marketing. And having done traditional marketing, advertising, all of that, got into strategic communications, did social impact. And that's where I saw the true impact and power of communications. And G42 was so exciting because in today's day and age, technology is pretty much at the heart of geopolitics, social impact, culture transformation, all of that. And it was an exciting challenge. And here we are, 2 years down, thoroughly enjoying it.
That's truly exciting, especially knowing that you had your own companies, you were a consultant for quite a long time on your own. So joining G42 has been quite an interesting journey for you.
It has. G42 is not a company. I would say it's a whole tribe and a universe in itself. And I'm sure we'll unpack a lot of this over the next series of podcasts on G42 on air.
Definitely we will. Faheem, when we talk about the G42 as a name, what was the inspiration behind the name? And what do you really do and why?
Cool. So that's the other cool part why I joined G42. Do you have any idea of what it means or it stands for as a name?
Not really. I mean, Group 42, but I didn't understand the whole idea of 42.
So you got 50%, right? The G stands for group.
Yeah.
But the 42 is actually inspired from Douglas Adams' fictional book, The Hitchhiker's Guide.
The famous book.
Indeed. And that's where there's a whole storyline of a supercomputer trying to find the meaning of life. And after 1,000 years of computing, the supercomputer says 42 is the meaning of life. And that's our brand. And that's why we come to work every day, is using the power of technology to find that meaning and how we can be useful for society. It's pretty cool. In terms of what we do, G42 is a UAE-born AI and cloud computing technology company that has been innovating, disrupting, and I would say confounding expectations using AI technology solutions ever since it was conceived in 2018. So we're still a very young organization. We look at ourselves as a startup on steroids, but we've got scale. I would say we're a team of dreamers, innovators, technologists from over 80 countries and 80 nationalities. So it's quite diverse, quite inclusive. We're headquartered in Abu Dhabi, and pretty much everyone is obsessed with solving challenging, complex issues using the power of AI and then having an impact on that in our lives. How can we make it better? How can we make it more sustainable? And how can we make it more meaningful through computing solutions? So that's who we are and what we do. We have a whole suite of operating companies that again is quite complex to define as one organization. But I'm sure over the series of podcasts, a lot of that will get unpacked. So right from digital infrastructure to cloud computing, to healthcare and life sciences, to clean tech and renewables, and intelligent mobility. We're going to touch on all of that in this entire series, just to kind of get into the skin of what AI is and how it's touching our lives. And we really see AI as the technology for the next frontier of humanity.
You know, when we talk about the AI, I mean, there's a lot to cover, like you just mentioned. It's very broad. But what do you see as the role of AI in transforming society and industries?
I think it's quite a deep and profound question, and there is no kind of silver bullet answer to this. But if you look at ourselves and the global society, we're in the midst of what I call a technological renaissance, right? That's what we're going through. And we're so close in it that we can't see what's happening. And that's why we find it a bit kind of disturbing, confusing, all of that, right? Now, if you look at nations, industries, organizations, even individuals like you and me, we're all going through digital transformation in some form or the other, right? And it's catalyzing how we behave even beyond our own imagination. And that's where kind of the fear factor comes in and the nervousness comes in, right, as to what's really happening. And if you look at it, AI is pretty much at the heart of all that disruptiveness that is happening in that technology.
We aren't even aware that we are part actually of it sometimes.
Indeed. And if you just take a historical context, just look at electricity and what it did in the second industrial revolution, right? Similarly, in this phase of digital revolution, we need to look at AI as a utility. If you start looking at it that way, we'll start getting more context to see how all this is unpacking. So it's fascinating times. It truly is.
That's very true, Faheem. But what considerations are companies like yourselves, like G42, taking to ensure that the AI and, let's say, related technologies are being developed to create a more meaningful, intentional, but yet it's quite ethical for businesses and people?
Okay. So you've got all the tough questions for me on the first.
Yes, exactly.
So thank you very much. I think AI is yet to be clearly understood, and more importantly, better articulated and defined as a concept, because it's evolving. So we're pretty much seeing it built, right? So to box it and give it definition is difficult. There are misconceptions, yes, there are misunderstandings, and there's a lot of fear about what AI is. And there is the whole rhetoric of existential threat, that the AI will take over the world and robots will kind of rule us. and
You
all
can't
of
blame
that.
us. It's all the movies and the
It
media.
is. It is, right?
Yes, yes.
And it's not far-fetched. Once we kind of start discussing where AI is, we'll see a lot of it is actually happening now, but we got to look at it from a different lens. I think there is merit in the idea of being conscious of the potential challenges and working towards solving some of these problems using the power of AI, but not by being alarmist to stunt evolution and the use of artificial intelligence. I think there's a latent fear created in AI, and me and my team, this is our raison d'etre, demystifying the misconceptions of technology and AI, and collectively build a culture and ethos of ethical and responsible AI. I think that is very, very much upon us as technologists to be able to do that, because this is going to be transformational stuff, and we're already seeing it happen. We as consumers are actually benefactors of AI in our day-to-day life, and we just don't see it that way, right?
Yeah.
So little things, and we saw more of it during the pandemic and post-pandemic. So ordering our food online, buying our groceries, our consumption on media and social media, okay? If you look at all those little things, including your voice prompt that you ask your different platforms to do your little shows, switching off light, turning this on, locking the door, it's all AI. So back to my point, AI is the utility that is driving all of this. Now you might say this is all kind of top line stuff, but what is it really doing? And we had the personal experience ourselves in our fight against the pandemic, where we used AI for COVID management, fighting the pandemic, both for detection of the epidemic and also in drug discovery, which has really helped the society to kind of jump back, both economically and as a society.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I remember in the UAE, we were way, way faster than any other country, also in the Middle East.
Indeed.
In discovering
Indeed.
the whole,
I mean, it's part of human evolution, right? Man created fire. The fire did a lot in our evolution. But if at some point fire was thought as the one that's going to kind of burn the jungles down and never use it, it would have been kind of what a waste, right? So similarly, we've gone through so many evolutions, and in this digital transformation, we see AI to be embraced, but do it responsibly and do it ethically, is what I would say.
But what do you see, from a cons perspective, like there's pros and cons for it. So if there's anything that you look at in G42 that possibly worries you of people, mistreating this technology, is there something that you would look at and you would say that there's a way of creating the proper legalization to protect it and protect also people's privacy and consumers' privacy?
Sure. So I think the fundamental truth is ethical and responsible AI is non-negotiable for us at G42. I think that's at the bedrock. But I'd like us to open up our mind a bit. Okay, the moment we think about AI from a very human-centric point of view, okay, is a moment we lose to understand the true potential and power of AI. Okay, we need to pretty much expand our minds to the idea and look at AI as almost another being in the making. And it's a scary thought, but it's exciting, and we as humans have the power to then make it useful rather than just only destructive, right? So there is a conundrum, but there is that responsibility. And the consortium of artificial intelligence and human intelligence, right, which is interesting as you see it, should collectively develop and build technology that is compatible to the ideals of humanity.
Sure.
Diversity, inclusiveness, and all that to enrich our lives.
Sure.
Why are we doing it in the first place? It needs to create safer and more efficient societies. We see what's happening to our planet, right? And we need to be more sustainable. for our planet, and I would say even our universe, because who knows, in 50 years we'll be on other
Where we're going to
planets.
be. And in a way or another, Faheem, I believe it's happening, so we better integrate and take part of it. But my only concern, Faheem, would you replace me with a robot to do the interview with you, or you wouldn't do that? This is very important to know.
So let me frame it a different way. There might be a digital Faheem doing the interview, not me. So clearly,
oh, it's going to happen.
It could happen, right? It could happen. Yeah, but right. I don't think we're going to lose the soul of it. We're doing this to make our lives better. Yeah. And it's not to replace us. I mean, that's not where I think the world's going.
True. And I mean, covering this topic, what do you see as the next chapter in the development? I mean, we covered so many aspects now, but what do you see as the next chapter in the development and implementation of this AI technology?
Okay, so I have to confess, I'm not the expert, right? I work with the best of minds at G42 and the wider ecosystem of our global partners, and I've had the privilege to kind of be in the lab and be in the thinking rooms to see, what does this all mean? And I'm going through my own learning curve. So I'm beginning to learn and understand the idea of AI. And where we are now is what we call the artificial narrow intelligence. Okay. Now, what this really means is it's kind of all the examples I shared earlier, right? It's your voice command to unlock your phone, your Face ID. These are all brilliant use cases of AI, but it's kind of single dimensional. Where the machine is not doing any more thinking for you, it's just executing what you've commanded. But AI has the power to kind of take it to the next level. And we see that, especially if you look at healthcare as an example, right? We're all having wearables now, and we're looking for prompts on when to stand, when to sit, how many steps have we done, all of that. So imagine you telling your voice command saying, order me a burger, and it actually happens, right? But imagine then the voice command says, hey, but you haven't really moved or exercised all of today. Why don't we burn some calories and then treat ourselves to our burger?
And if I'm angry, I'll tell her, just get me the burger. I want it right now.
Correct, which the technology should do, right?
Yes.
And it's not prompting intuitively on its own. It's because you yourself have programmed and self-selected the need to prompt you because you don't have the discipline yourself.
True.
And that's how it starts enriching your life based on what you want.
Yeah, but talking about that specifically, we can take it in a very positive way, and I totally agree with you. Like even like my husband, he has a watch, and when he sleeps, he knows exactly how he slept, how deep it was, the whole, and I'm like, whoa, like the watch is telling you everything. It's about to tell us what are our dreams, even to that extent. I think possibly in the near future it can read minds. Yeah, exactly. But Faheem, there's still a lot of misconception around the implementation and adoption of this technology, the artificial intelligence. What would you say to someone who is hesitant about taking it on?
You need to look at artificial intelligence as a utility, as an enabler for us to transcend into where the world is heading, right? For betterment of humanity, for how we operate our nations, our organizations, how consumers are evolving, and also how we can save the planet. And if I kind of look inwards and what we've got lined up in the future episodes of G42 on air, I'm very excited with the kind of content and topics that we have. As an organization, for the last 4 years, our scientists, our engineers, our analysts, our data scientists, our inventors and project teams have been very, very busy with developmental work, getting proof of concepts done, and from that, implementing it to large scale. And while we continue to do that, we thought, why don't we create this platform, G42 on Air, to share, and more importantly, to learn and exchange ideas at a global level, and look at this collectively as to how do we solve real complex challenges using the power of AI and technology. There's a lot of topics that we want to touch upon, which are all very topical from clean tech to renewable. We've got COP28 coming up, which we're going to host here in UAE, for which we're very excited. Smart cities, that's what everyone wants and wants to live into. That's become a cool factor there. From AI in workplace, people are working from home. Different constructs have come about post-pandemic. How can we optimize on that and have better work-life balance, for example? These are all real things. And then healthcare, right? 2 years ago, we were doing vaccine trials, and then we've got the genome program. But our healthcare team is very much looking at how do we move from sick care management to preventive and personalized healthcare, which is a paradigm shift. And
it's
this
a
is
huge
going to
paradigm shift,
benefit
actually.
all of us.
Yeah, totally.
All of us. And in all this process, what we're trying to do is pretty much try and unpack the mysticism behind AI and look at it from different angles. We'd also like to, beyond our own experts, call in our partners, industry experts, policymakers, disruptors from all around to contribute to that conversation. We're also looking at collaborations between G42 On Air and other podcast channels and see if we can have some more disruptive stuff going on, like how about AI and arts and culture? Not mainstream. There are some very good experimental work happening. Why don't we go and kind of try that out? So there are a lot of interesting things that we've pretty much got lined up for this.
Which reminded me also of watching a couple of YouTube videos. I mean, G42 is involved in music, sports, healthcare.
Indeed.
I mean, you name it. And I realized
Indeed.
that AI, it has so much
Indeed.
going to be part of our culture in every single aspect. And like you said, collaboration is extremely important to go to the next level.
And it's very important for all of us to actually understand, what it is, how it's affecting my life, and that then can inform you of how much you want to partake in this development. And that's where data privacy and all of that comes to know. We saw similar examples when it came to vaccine trials and vaccination. You remember the misinformation, the disinformation when we were running through the pandemic.
Yes, of course.
But it was all about educating people, giving facts, getting people to understand and make their own decisions. I think similarly, we need to do the same for AI because it's at such nascent stage and there's so much of Hollywood films
Exactly.
and other conversations that we need to open up this debate and flow and inform our audiences and
There's
stakeholders.
so much education that is missing about AI.
Indeed.
Be it the old generation or even our generation. And people don't realize that AI is way beyond just technology that's helping, let's say, IT industries or government sectors or
Correct.
smart cities.
Correct.
It's way more, it's actually going to be implemented in every single part of our lives. It is. I mean, just 6 months ago, we trialed our first autonomous ride share here in Abu Dhabi. Yes, I remember, in Yas Island.
On Yas Island.
Yeah, it was all over the news.
While we were all excited, when I sat in it, it was quite freaky, right? There's kind of the steering's moving on its own and taking you there, and you're not in charge. But once you accept that, and then you know that for the next half an hour while the car's going to take you from A to B, you've probably got some work done, or perhaps spend some quality time with your wife or your child instead of focusing on the road to drive. So that kind of enriches your own life, right?
True.
So that's what it comes down
It
to.
will just take time to digest the concept,
Indeed.
in our minds to be able to be driven just with autonomous cars. Thank you so much, Faheem. This is going to be a very exciting podcast. I really appreciate your time and all these things that you have told us about. It's going to be really explaining what you're going to be doing for the rest of the episodes.
Thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed the session. I look forward to kind of learning from all the guests who are going to come online and contributing to demystifying AI through G42 On Air. I truly appreciate being the guinea pig of the first episode.
Thank you so much once again. That brings us to the end of the show. I'd like to thank Faheem once again for joining us on this first episode. We hope that this conversation has contributed to your foundation for understanding where humanity in tech lies. Thanks for listening to G42 on Air. If you enjoy our show, please rate and review us on all podcast channels and be sure to come back next time. Until then, this is May Said Ali signing off from Abu Dhabi.